Talk about low-budget flights, no food or movies? I'm out of here. I like running better. Welcome back, YouTube viewers, to another video. Alright, so today's video is something I've been wanting to make for almost 2 years now, back when I first started this channel. Because that's right, it is finally time for me to talk about IDW Sonic. Now, if you just take one look at this channel, just look at the channel name, you'd know that I love Archie Sonic. I don't think it's perfect, especially in the reboot, but I still love a lot of what it did, and more importantly, I appreciate a lot of what it did. Even when it was bad, for the most part, even the bad stuff, I could still find some value in it. Like all the weird exposition about Nate Morgan or whatever. I still think there was an interesting story there, it just wasn't as well executed as it could have been. Point is, I love Archie Sonic, I love so much of what it did. So, put yourself in my shoes. So, I'm a big Archie Sonic fan. I find out, okay, there's also an IDW comic I've been hearing a lot of positive stuff about. I'm hearing everyone say that, yeah, I see, like, the character's been so bad in the 2010s, like, like, the lame characterization in Forces and Team Sonic Racing, but no, you gotta check out the IDW comics. They're amazing, guys, and I'm thinking, wow, this is a lot of praise. And I'm reading Archie Sonic, I'm saying, huh, Ian Flynn, what a great writer. I'm saying, huh, Tracy Yardley, what a great artist, etc., etc. I see IDW Sonic is written by Ian Flynn. Tracy Yardley, as well as some others like Jamal Peppers, did the artwork. So I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this is going to be a great comic. Probably won't be as good as Archie because of all the mandates and stuff, but people say it's good. It's starting fresh. This could be something really good. And then I read it. This is a very complicated story, to say the least. When I first read IDW Sonic, I read that first issue contained in the first graphic novel. I was interested. It wasn't amazing, but I saw, okay, Tracy Yardley did the pencils, they even got Jim Amash back to do the inks, which was great. They got Matt Herms to do the colors, they got Ian Flynn's dialogue, and I knew Metal Sonic was the villain of the first arc, so I thought, okay, this is something, I'm interested. I get to issue 2, it's about Sonic and Amy, not as interesting, but, it's fine. Issue 3, Sonic and Knuckles, I don't really care about these rough and tumble guys, but whatever, they're just annoying goons, who cares if they're bad? Because we're building up something, and we got Knuckles, and it's annoying that the artwork keeps changing for every single issue, but, that's just whatever, it's the beginning. And then, the plot can still be kind of interesting. Issue 4 ends with the tease of Eggman. Okay, let's get going. And then we get to issue... Sure, I found this Tangle character to be really annoying, but whatever. We got Blaze, isn't that cool? And then we get to issues 5 to 8. Oh boy. I knew going into this that people do not like this comic's interpretation of Shadow, which we'll get into later. So when I saw that interpretation of Shadow, I thought, man, he does suck as much as people say. How did Ian Flynn go from writing pre-boot Shadow, and then even reboot Shadow, to this, which I'll get into later, I promise. And then, we get this Whisper character, who's kind of interesting, but I don't care too much about, and we get Silver swearing for some reason. And then we get this pretty cool battle with Neo Metal Sonic at the end, but then we get, Eggman's returning, and then we get to, as you can see, the intro's about almost over. When I went into this comic's first arc, even though I would say I was still enjoying it for the most part, there were so many asterisks for me. There were so many, well, I don't really care too much about this thing, but I'm sure it'll get better, or I'm sure it'll go to focus on this. It's so praised after all. After the Metal Virus story, I just thought, I kept reading the comic, but I just thought, this is bad. This is just bad. I've seen so many people call this comic painfully mediocre, but that's too nice in my opinion. Well, I'm going to be positive, don't worry. But to really understand why I take so much issue with this comic, we have to get deep. Let's start off with this. Why are you here? Who likes the Deadly Six? I thought we all agreed that Sonic Lost World was bad. And out of any element of the game that people debated, yes, the fact that it was a Mario Galaxy ripoff, that after they abandoned all the goodwill after Sonic Generations, but that the story of the game revolved around these just awful villains. You have the Deadly Six, or the Zeddy, or whatever, who are so clearly just, these look like Mario reject characters. Zavok was designed to invoke Bowser. Just look at him, the big red guy in the front. And all the 6 of the Deadly Six, yes, it's only 5 of them here actually. I guess there is the 6th one, but they all are just so boring and annoying at the same time. Everyone agrees on this for the most part. They are each just one singular character trait that just gets played over and over and over again. Their designs are impossible to take seriously, and sure, the game doesn't really want you to take them seriously because they're portrayed as joke villains, but the game still does kind of want to portray them seriously when Eggman says, "These are the Deadly Six, and they are your worst nightmares," or whatever. And it gets so serious that Sonic, Tails, and Eggman team up, and it's just, what? And then we get to how the comic actually treats them. I remember reading the Metal Virus, I'm thinking, I'm not too big into this, but maybe something interesting will happen. I mean, it looks like Starline is maybe going to do something. And then I see the end. I read these in graphic novels for the most part, so I get to the end of the graphic novel, the last page. He's looking through Eggman's files and thinking, okay, what's going to happen, what's going to happen? And then he sees, what's this file? On a place called the Lost Hex, I met its 6 deadly inhabitants, the Zeddy. And then I just thought, oh no, please don't. And then guess what? The Deadly Six become the main villains of like the longest Sonic comic arc ever. The Deadly Six. Who cares about these guys? Seriously, why are they here? And the worst thing is that before, they were still, in the games, they were weirdly portrayed as being something you were supposed to take seriously, but they were also portrayed as joke villains. Just look at their designs. It's hard to take them seriously. But IDW wants you to take these guys really seriously. They're big and threatening and mean, and they kill people. Like, they just straight up kill people. It's never explicitly shown, but it's heavily implied. They conquer all these people, they take the Metal Virus, and they start basically turning people into zombies. Like Eggman was doing, except it's wild. And everything just goes terrible. All the characters have to hide on Angel Island to get away from Zavok, who turns into a giant. He starts breathing fire. And then Super Sonic and Super Silver show up, which was admittedly pretty cool. I mean, even Archie didn't include Super Silver. But I'm just thinking, why are these guys here? I don't want to see Zavok be the final villain of the biggest Sonic comic arc ever. I want to see Eggman. Like, it is... Okay, this is kind of for later, but it is because there's no real section about the Metal Virus in this video. I'm just talking about it sporadically, but that arc, Eggman creates a zombie apocalypse, and he did not create a cure even for himself. When Starline, his assistant, tells him, hey, what if the virus becomes airborne? What if you catch it? He just says, whatever, I'll figure it out. Eggman is supposed to be super smart. You cannot tell me he wouldn't create a zombie apocalypse and not come up with some kind of cure. It doesn't even get cured from what I remember. Super Sonic and Super Silver just shoot it into space. It's so stupid. And it's all held together that even a moment as cool as this of Super Sonic and Silver working together, it's done. They fight Zavok. I don't care about them fighting Zavok. Super Silver's appearance in the games, his only appearance, was him and Sonic and Shadow fighting a demigod of time in space. But now we get him fighting Big Bowser Man. And the Zeddy just never go away. I'll talk about them more later, but I'm just asking, why are they here? Nobody cares about them. Do I even need to elaborate on this? I mean, if you know this comic, I think this needs no explanation, but it's time to get into it. It's time to get into IDW's absolutely abysmal interpretation of Shadow the Hedgehog. I mentioned that Ian Flynn did a great job writing Shadow in Pre-Boot Archie Sonic and Reboot, and what impresses me about that is that we all talk about Sega's mandates, the restrictions. I've seen people who say, well, the only reason Flynn writes bad stuff now, and other writers do, like Evan Stanley, no, they write bad stuff because of Sega's mandates. And while that may be true, those mandates do exist. The mandates didn't start with IDW. They started with Reboot. And in Reboot, Shadow was actually good. He had a, not amazing, but an interesting enough character arc that tied into his lore, that showed his relationships with other characters, that made him likable, he was cool, the art was really good. It was a good version of Shadow. I liked it. Like his whole arc where he fights the Black Arms again, he says, You devour worlds and call yourselves righteous. I will defend the world that Maria loved unconditionally. It's a good scene, you know? But when Shadow first appears in IDW, he has like a super angry face like he's gonna kill someone because he wants to kill Eggman. But Sonic says, well, no, you see, he lost his memory, he's Mr. Tinker now, he's a good guy, and you know what? That is true. But here's the thing, Shadow killing Eggman maybe wouldn't be the worst thing, but also I get why Sonic says don't kill him. But then Sonic's also telling him, well, gee, Shadow, you used to be a bad guy, so, you know, does that mean we should kill you? Which, how are those two things comparable? Eggman took over the world in the last game, because remember, Sonic 1 to Sonic Forces, they all take place before this game. This comic canonically comes right after Sonic Forces. So apparently Sonic thinks that the big evil dictator who took over the world is comparable to a guy who everyone knows for a fact had his memories manipulated, which is why he did bad things, and as soon as he found out the truth, he immediately became a good guy. But no, because Shadow's got to be some dumb edgelord now, he has to be treated as a villain, because that's the thing. Shadow is supposed to be a good guy in this comic, but he really doesn't feel like it. He feels more like some kind of terrible Vegeta knockoff. I mean, we all know this infamous line. Sonic's telling him, hey, look, if you get infected by the metal virus, you can just run it off with your speed like I am. And he just says, cowards run, I win. And then, even though he can shoot Chaos Spears, which would mean he could hit the Zombots without getting touched by them and infected, he decides to start punching giant crowds of them. And guess what? He gets infected. And there's never some kind of arc Shadow has over this. He never learns that, hey, I shouldn't be diving so quickly into conflicts when people are continuously warning me to be careful. And you know what? Despite the fact that this comic shows so much of the video game cast, it shows the Babylon Rogues interacting with the main characters outside of being on a race or whatever, but how come we never get to see Team Dark together? We see Shadow and Rouge together a lot, but Omega is never with them. And it doesn't feel like Shadow and Rouge are actually friends. It feels more like Rouge is just Shadow's charismatic sidekick who just hangs around him and he just barely tolerates her. Thinking, someone's got to come with me. Fine, Rouge, just get over here. Let's get this over with already. Let's go fight Eggman or something. And Shadow always has his arms crossed and he has these super mean expressions. He's no fun. Shadow is a serious character, but he's also an emotional one. Shadow has no emotion in this comic. He is just an edgelord. It feels like the writers just looked at the Shadow the Hedgehog game from 2005, they just looked at his characterization in Sonic Boom, and said, this is Shadow. Rant over. Starline. So you know what? Starline was actually kind of an interesting idea, especially when I first started reading this comic. So, the idea is that he kidnaps Eggman, who is Mr. Tinker, he's lost his memories, so he thinks he's a good guy, and he turns him back into Eggman. He brings back his old memories. And the point is that he's a twist. Instead of being an Eggman lackey like Snively who always wants to betray Eggman, he actually likes him. He sees the Mad Doctor as a visionary. But there's one problem with this setup. Because at face value, I do think the idea of an Eggman lackey who doesn't betray him is interesting. But also, why does he not betray him? Why does he like Eggman? It's never explained. I guess he's just also a sociopath, like some kind of psycho? I guess. I mean, duh, but there's never given any reason. I've seen people say that, you know what? Starline may have worked a bit better in Preboot Archie Sonic, where Eggman took over the world and the whole comic was about this war where we see different people who are forced to work for Eggman or else they die, or they are affected by his conquest in various different ways. So having a story in Preboot about a guy who actually likes Eggman because he says, look, he rules the world, he was smart enough to take over the world, and he's got so much power, that's gotta be something I should respect, right? But this is the world of the games, technically. Eggman just runs around packing people, whatever. It doesn't really make any sense. And there's also the fact that, what characters do Starline actually tie in with? He has no real kind of dynamic with Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, Tango, Whisper, Silver, Blaze, Shadow, etc. So I'm just left thinking, okay, then what is his purpose? Because every single time he appears, once he strikes out on his own, he's just being told, Starline, you're an idiot. I mean, he brings the Deadly Six into the comic, which is, something I did not like, as you could tell from earlier. So he brings those guys into the comic, and then he just gets kicked out of Eggman's forces because he's told, you're an idiot, you just brought these crazy guys into my ship, and now they're the main villains. They took away my spot of power. And then, so he just continuously says, I've got these big plans, and then gets beaten up and says, well, I've got more big plans, and then he fights Eggman, and his death scene is basically just Eggman saying, you thought you were so smart, but no, you are a loser, you were never as smart as me, and he dies. I know they might be setting up his return, maybe, but I'm just thinking, if they are, who cares? Seriously, it's Starline. OCs, yeah. So, people have always talked about Archie Sonic had a lot of original characters, which is true, duh. But, well, not all of those characters were good. The reason they worked is because, for the most part, the comic treated every character equally, aside from Sonic, who got a little bit more stuff to do than the rest of the characters. So basically, even if Tails wasn't the number 2 character, let's say even if Shadow weren't the number 2 character, it's not like he'd be overshadowed by the Down Under Freedom Fighters. No, everyone had focus when was necessary. For as little as some characters did, they were still memorable. And when it did get time for the video game characters, they had well-rounded arcs. Sonic has a lot of great character development he never really changes that much, but all of his lessons are about learning that he does have an ego, and he can be a jerk sometimes, even if he doesn't mean it. Shadow has to learn about his past and getting a new mission in his life. Knuckles deals with all the baggage of his ancestry. You've got Tails doing some stuff. You've got some stuff with Silver. But come time for IDW, so IDW was not initially created to take place in the world of the games. Yes, it was supposed to be that the games are canon to it, not it is canon to the games. But when that became a priority, it meant that, we can't really give focus to Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, etc., because we don't want to interfere with anything the games might do. So all the focus goes to characters like Tangle and Whisper, Surge and Kid, Starline, etc. And here's the thing. I wouldn't mind this as much if they were just good. Let's start off with Tangle. People love Tangle. They call her one of the best Sonic characters in years, man. She's so funny and likable. And no. I just think Tangle's annoying. There's nothing more to it. I just don't like her. I think she is annoying. That's it. People talk about how well her design fits in with the games, but I don't really think that's true, but we'll talk about that later. As for Whisper, who I want to focus on, I think Whisper was an interesting idea. That she is basically the avatar character from Sonic Forces, but like an actual character with a name. And the idea that she's really sheltered, she speaks in whispers, hence her name. She's pretty quiet and reserved. And we get to the Tangle Whisper miniseries, where we find out that she has this sad backstory about how her team was betrayed by one of their own and made her really emotionally messed up, and that's why she speaks in whispers. But through being friends with Tangle, she learns to open up to other people. And she slowly, she actually speaks normally for a change. And I think that's really nice. But here's the problem with it. Because I'm 99% sure the backstory was thought up after she was named, it meant that, she's always got to be the quiet character who barely ever speaks. So her genuinely good development in that miniseries gets shafted because we continuously have to go back to her, keeping her mask on most of the time. She continuously has to barely speak and speak in whispers. She's not, I thought that since it's all about the OCs, these guys would get a lot of development because the writers were allowed to do whatever they wanted with them. But no, she still stays mostly the same, and all her development just never goes anywhere. And I just think that's a really big shame. Now you can't say, since her backstory was thought of after she was named, it wouldn't really make sense for a character named Whisper to not speak in whispers all the time. And to that I say, I don't know, I think it'd be a good story if she did start speaking normally despite being named Whisper. It'd be kind of ironic, And she could still speak in whispers, but just make her just a bit more outgoing. Make her a bit, she'd still be serious, but just make her a bit less reserved, It's just a shame that a genuinely good bit of development just never went anywhere. Oh my god. We gotta talk about Surge. I'm gonna talk about Surge more later, but I do not like Surge. Someone I know saw her for the first time a couple years back and said, "That's Scourge." I mean, look, Surge is obviously meant to be this comic's version of Scourge. Yes, she is, a female, not a male. She's not Sonic's evil twin or anything. She has a very different backstory. But when you just look at her design and what her personality is kind of meant to be, she is obviously meant to invoke Scourge. That is undeniable. I think it's stupid the whole Ken Penders lawsuit and how he won the rights to Scourge's character, but if he actually did legitimately own the rights, I would be obviously he can't sue for Surge, but I'd be mad too if I said, I'm done with this franchise, then you just go and make a character that ripped off a character I made. Sure, he didn't actually make Scourge, but that's besides the point. So, when Surge is introduced, she has this really depressing backstory about how she was kidnapped by Starline, and she was turned into a cyborg alongside Kit. And she was basically meant to be Starline's answer to Sonic, except the fact that the story is even called Imposter Syndrome. There's just one problem: she doesn't look anything like Sonic or really have any of the same powers aside from being fast, because her name is Surge. Lightning powers are the name of her game. And so the point of her backstory is that, she hates Sonic because of his whole stupid moral code, which, boy, I'll tear into later, about how he's just a huge jerk, and he doesn't really care about her, because after Sonic and Surge first meet, Surge eventually overdoses, she takes too much power, and she nearly dies. And Kit, her best friend, tells Sonic, "You don't really care about us. You just care about maintaining your stupid principles. And nothing you have done has actually helped us." And that is true. Surge's life is a wreck. If Sonic didn't just decided to be stricter with Eggman and Starline, Surge would not have been created. She would not have been kidnapped and turned into a cyborg. But no one really cares about that, because everyone loves Sonic, as she says. He's the world's hero. So you have this depressing, dark story about how this person was kidnapped and turned into a cyborg, and she says later, "No one ever came looking for me, so what, is she an orphan, maybe?" And it ends the next arc after this story ends with her almost dying. And it's just supposed to be sad. And the colors are dark and grim and all that. But then the very next time she shows up, she's acting all silly and goofy and kind of cool and charismatic. She's saying, "Well, I may have, you told me that I could just be good, so now I'm going to try to be good." Never mind the fact that when this happened, she despised Sonic and said, "Your philosophy is incredibly stupid and makes no sense." But now she's just suddenly good and cool with everyone. Sure. My problem with this isn't just the fact that it makes no sense. It's also just that it's very tonally inconsistent. Surge was established to be a dark character. Yes, characters should be able to exist in a variety of different tones, but when you have a character like Surge, having this be such a 180 is just, it's so weird. I mean, if Avatar The Last Airbender, can you imagine if Zuko went from being, he's an edgy prince in Season 2, then he goes to not being able to understand his purpose in life in Season 2. I mean, Season 1, he was an edgy prince. Season 2, he was trying to figure out his purpose in life. Should he be good or bad? In Season 3, he decides, no, I am going to be good. But can you imagine if the middle chapter were just gone and he just went straight from being the villain to being a good guy? It wouldn't really make sense. You could look at lots of redemption stories, like Vegeta and Dragon Ball. Vegeta doesn't go from being the main villain to the number 2 main character in a night. It happens over the course of many volumes, or if you're watching the anime, many episodes. Whatever. But the thing that annoys me most about these characters is that they're not going away. Surge, Kit, Tangle, and Whisper are all going to be in Sonic Racing Cross Worlds. They were all in this mobile game Sonic Forces Speed Battle. Clearly, Sega is trying to mix the comics and the game, which is why, they made the comics canon to the games. They have become so prevalent in the latest episode of the Chaotix Case Files, Tangle and Whisper are in it now. And I've really enjoyed this Chaotix Case Files series, by the way, and I did like this episode. But do we really need Tangle and Whisper to appear? But my biggest problem is that, look, if they were introduced in the games, but they were introduced as new characters, like we learn their backstories and all that, that would be one thing. But the thing is, since the comics are now canon to the games, it just expects you to know who Tangle and Whisper are, with no explanation at all. And here's the thing, most people don't read the IDW comics. The comics are only read by the series' most diehard fans. You might think immediately this makes no sense, but more people have read Archie than IDW, and still those characters are fairly obscure. So a comic that is only read by hardcore Sonic fans, the millions of people who play the games who've never even heard of a Sonic comic, are just going to think if they ever do appear in the mainline games, who the heck are these people? They're just not going away. Now, you might say, well, you're criticizing the IDW characters for not fitting in the games, but the Archie ones don't either. You know what? You're right. But that's missing the point. Look at Elias Acorn here. He is specifically made for the world of Archie. And I am completely fine with that. I don't need him to appear in a cartoon or a video game or a podcast or whatever, because he was made for Archie. If he were in a different story, unless the story were heavily reworked to adapt Archie, then it wouldn't really make sense for him to appear, unless you were turned into a completely different character. But you got a character like Tangle, and she's just in everything. She got a new action figure last year. That is arguably better designed than most of the other Sonic action figures. Like, her action figure has elbow articulation. Like, basically all the other ones don't. But the one based on the obscure comic book character did? Why is that getting more detail from toy designers than the main cast? And also, like I said that I don't care that Elias doesn't appear in the games because he wasn't designed for them. Even though Tangle was technically designed for the games, when I look at her design, I just don't think she fits in. It's mostly just the yellow, like the shoes and everything. She fits in fine, I guess, but when I look at her next to all the game characters, even characters like the Babylon Rogues, I just don't think she fits in. And again, I would not necessarily be as annoyed with her in Whisper and Surge and all those other characters if they weren't being shoved into everything. And for the last time, I don't need the Archie characters to appear in anything else. But it annoys me, the IDW characters are getting put on this pedestal by Sega. They're being shoved into everything. Despite the fact that, and then these other characters from the longest running licensed comic book in history, which is around for over 20 years, is getting completely ignored. No graphic novel re-releases, no t-shirt or something for adult collectors, nothing. But these newbies get everything. And it doesn't help the fact that I don't like them. Okay, time to talk about stuff I actually do like. So, there's just this one quick B-story in an annual called Sonic Fan Club. I'm only really pointing out this story because it was written by James Kachalica, who did all the Sponge Funnies. If you don't know what Sponge Funnies are, there are these stories included in SpongeBob comics. You can find them on YouTube, like dubs of them. They're really fun, I like them. But also, so it's cool he got to work on Sonic. What's also cool? The art was done by John Gray. John Gray did a lot of stuff for Archie Sonic. He drew Return to Angel Island, he redesigned the Freedom Fighters for the reboot, he did a couple extra issues, he drew the infamous slap, I'm sure I'm not even going to explain that. Just, if you don't know what it is, somehow, just look it up, Archie Sonic slap, whatever. And it's cool to see him still work for IDW, because he did a couple covers too, so it's nice to see an old head of Archie get to do some new stuff. Also, there's a story about Jet the Hawk from the 2022 annual. I actually own the 2022 annual, and it's nothing major, but it's just a fun story, Jet the Hawk is gonna eat his pizza, but then it gets stolen by one of Whisper's wisps, which, by the way, Whisper, what are you doing? You just stole this guy's food on his birthday? Even if you didn't know it's his birthday, you're still stealing from him. Who cares if he's not the nicest guy? That's mean. I felt really bad for Jet reading this story, dumb as it is to say. This poor guy's got his food stolen by just some alien thing. It is a fun story, though. Another story from that annual I quite like. So Silver, his whole deal is he travels to the past to save the future or whatever. But now he's just been living in the past, or present, I guess, for a while. Because I guess the writers wanted to make him a main part of the comic. But he's thinking, hey, what am I even doing here? I'm from the future, so why am I staying in the past? And SBO, who actually does have an established friendship with him from Sonic Rivals 2, he's talking about him. You can tell how Silver isn't feeling too well. And he's asking him, but why do you know why any of us are here? And he says, I do. I mean, I usually do. Every other time I've been sent to the past, it's been to save the future from turning into another wrecked world. That's my job, my purpose. And I always know what I need to do because it's history. But this time, there's no crisis in my future, and things are okay here. Everything's fine, but I'm not. Did I do something wrong? Am I missing something? What if some disaster hits tomorrow and... Espio tells him to just calm down. Because, yeah, danger could be waiting around the corner, but then his enemies would just beat him easily. What matters most is just having faith in himself, having faith in the strength of his friends, and not caring about the future or the past, just being here now and enjoying the fruits of his labor. And it's a really nice story. It's short, it's sweet, it's effective. Same goes for this next story. So you got Blaze the cat. You know, she's the guardian of the soul emerald from an alternate dimension. She's a princess, she fights robot pirates all day, but she's finally beaten all the pirates. And, like, she doesn't really do anything as a princess, and since she travels to Sonic's dimension so often, she decides, what the heck, I'll travel here. So she talks to Knuckles, who is also the guardian of a magic emerald. In this case, the Master Emerald. And he's telling her, so, you finally have the chance to get a break. You don't really actually do that much as a princess. You don't have anyone else to fight anymore. All your friends, much like the Silver, all your friends exist in this time period, or in this case, this dimension. So, just take a vacation. Because Knuckles says that, you know, he has to stay here to guard the Master Emerald. He can't really hide it anywhere. And he doesn't really get to leave that much, but whenever he does, it's great. Because, sure, it's not just that he's helping out his friends, but also he just gets to experience the world. He gets to see this amazing set of stars. So he's telling Blaze, from one guardian to another, now that you have the chance to take a break, to enjoy your life, take it. Like, just spend some time with your friends for once. And I think this is really good. I like this. It's nice. Sure, the artwork isn't that good, aside from this cool picture of the stars, but whatever. Time for probably the one story in this comic that I actually do genuinely love. This is from the 2019 annual. Another story about Silver and Blaze. Honestly, I think Silver and Blaze are probably the two best adapted characters in IDW, other than, I guess, the Chaotix. So, Blaze has come across Silver, who has gardening tools, because she finds out that he's been trying to grow a garden. Because, you know, he's from a dystopian future. So seeing a world where just things are alive and green, it's unbelievable. There's nothing like it where I'm from. When Amy told me I can grow my own, I got really excited. And then, you know, he says that he made sure to take such good care of his plants. He labeled everything. He watered everything twice. And it's just the weeds just keep getting in. But the good plants just don't listen. As soon as I fix one thing, something else pops up. It's no use, which... That's also a really clever line, because remember, Silver's whole deal is that as soon as he saves the future, there's another crisis. So this whole story is basically Silver learning to stop and smell the roses, which is, you know, it's about a garden too, so that's actually really clever. I never even really thought about that until just now, just reading that line while recording this. You know, he's freaked out that Blaze is burning his garden, but she tells him to just trust her, and he does. And she tells him that, you know, this garden was planted on the battlefield. The chemicals from the bombs have made the earth hard and acidic. Plants like these can't grow in it. But ashes can do many things, and one of them is this. When used to fertilize a garden, they will break down any acids in the soil and nourish the plants. So he's telling her, wow, that's cool, you must know so much about gardening, but she doesn't really. But she understands that a gardener's greatest skill isn't control or planning or power. It's listening. And how it's just a nice story about these two great characters learning to just sit down, not be so worried about anything, and just think about, what am I supposed to do now? How am I supposed to make this problem go away? And they grow a garden together. And it's just really nice, because this is a great story, yes, but it also works so well because it's about Silver and Blaze. Two characters who supposedly have a dynamic, and whenever you get to see it, it's nice, but they hardly ever interact. So getting to see them together is just, I like it. Beyond the fact that I ship them, you know, like most people do anyway, I just really like their dynamic, and this is a nice story. But here's the thing. As Boom Sonic would say, this is why we can't have nice things. So, I mentioned the 2022 annual, which is where that story about Blaze and Knuckles and Jet comes from, but what's another story in that annual? So, Omega is training with Gemroll, and and the story is called Weapons. I'll get to why that's relevant in a minute. So, he's telling Omega, who loves fighting and power and all that, he's telling Gemroll, you were built by Eggman. You were able to fight Sonic once. You're supposed to be so powerful, but you don't really care about fighting anymore. You just serve the Rabbit family. You're soft and a big loser. You've lost your speed and edge. And he's telling him, come on, join me. You and I are both similar in origin. We are both weapons that have broken free of Eggman's grasp. Accompany me in my mission to destroy his forces. Reclaim your original function as a battle robot. Abandon the puny Rabbit family. But then Gemroll's telling him, I don't care about that. Our origins may be superficially similar, but our directives are not aligned. You were built to destroy. I was built to evolve. And I've evolved to care for these people now. And you know what? I thought this was kind of an interesting story. But there's a few problems with it. One, well, I do get that Omega loves fighting and all that. Omega in IDW, while I don't hate him or anything, I think he's decent. He's a bit too violent in my opinion. I always thought that part of Omega's character was that he loves to fight and he loves battle, but he's trying to be a little bit softer about it. So him telling someone who still does fight sometimes, has fought Eggman in this comic, and has a new purpose in life about being a bit softer while still being a fighter, Omega telling this guy, you're a loser, join me, just doesn't really work in my opinion. But there's also something else about this story I don't like. I told you the title was called Weapons. That sure sounds familiar, doesn't it? The first issue of Sonic Universe is called Living Weapons, but issue 3 dives into this continuously. So, the whole part of that arc of Sonic Universe, the Shadow Saga, and it goes for a lot of stuff in Sonic, Archie Sonic, not even just among Archie Sonic, also Archie Mega Man, is that a lot of robot characters see themselves as living weapons. They were designed for a specific purpose, to fight. So when that purpose is stripped away, what are they? And even when they have that purpose, is that really fulfilling? Is that meaningful? It's great stuff. What also makes it work so well is that it is explored many times and is regularly built up. That story about Omega and Gemroll is completely out of nowhere and has no build-up, and it never gets expanded on again. But I want to be more positive, so let me talk about how good this part of Archie is. So Omega's made his debut. He's been sent to capture Gamma, who is a great Eggman robot who ended up betraying him. And he's saying, just stop embarrassing yourself, brother. You may have been powerful in your day, but look at a single one of my shots would tear through that old armor of yours. I detect smoke. Is that your graveling jet disc? Pathetic. You would not get far with it, even if it were in perfect condition. You were outdated, brother. Slower. Weaker. You cannot outrun me. And that pitiful gun of yours can't harm me. But Gamma says, well, I've downloaded the file about you. Your armor is great, but you're heavy. You're slow. Yes, your jets are stronger, but you're louder and you are unwieldy. I do not have such limitations. I am nimble. I cover ground more easily. As for weaponry, pow, 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 you are a walking arsenal. I am an assassin. And Omega says, you have made your point. There's more of this story I actually covered in the previous video. Honestly, you should just read this issue for yourself, but the point of this story is that both of them were created for a specific purpose, but both of them were able to break free of it in a way. Gamma was created to serve Eggman, but he was able to find a greater purpose in deciding to destroy all of Eggman's robots, to free the animals trapped inside, to give himself a true sense of freedom he never really had before. Omega is basically merges minds with Gamma, so he kills Gamma, but then Gamma downloads his code into Omega, so that basically Gamma's moral code becomes a part of Omega, and he's thinking, now that I have a life, now that I have feelings, what the heck am I supposed to do? I'm a destruction machine. So Shadow tells him, hey, that destruction power of yours, use it to go beat up Eggman or something. He says, yeah, now I can cause plenty of destruction, but I'm actually doing something positive. And this story doesn't end here either. Like I said, it continuously gets expanded on through other characters, even in the next issue right after this. This is a story that has proper meaning because it's about characters that get focus. They get enough time to shine to give us a reason to care about them. Even though Omega in general get a lot of screen time, this kind of characterization is never really explored at all, so I'm just left asking, okay, why should I care? The fact that the title is even called Weapons instead of Living Weapons just tells me that this story is just an inferior version of something that came a decade earlier. And then there's a story about Silver and Blaze, because this comic comes so close yet so far to really giving me something to latch onto. I talked about how much I liked Silver and Blaze before. That story about their garden, the story about SBO and Knuckles, great stuff. So we had this nice little story where Silver's mad about how he's given all this great advice, but he just can't really do things. And he's sitting in front of his garden, which I like. It's actually like a bit more colorful now. And Blaze is telling him, you want this garden to flourish, right? And he says, yeah. You want to harvest its bounty? You want to harvest its bounty eventually? Yes. Will you achieve that with bold, proactive action or with small, dedicated efforts over time? It kind of ties back to the whole story from earlier about Silver having to stop to smell the roses, to be in the moment instead of being worried about what was and what will be. Because yesterday's history, yada yada, you know the quote. When I first read this, I thought, okay, I like this. And, continues, Silver and Blaze have some nice banter, and then Sonic just shows up and says, yeah, you two, you should be together. Granted, he says not like that. He says, you're good friends, you're a good duo like me and Tails. And, I like this. But on reread, this doesn't really work as well as it did the first time, because when I first read this, I was thinking, wow, Silver and Blaze having a nice heart-to-heart. Isn't that cool? But when you think about it more, and you looked at the rest of this story, it becomes clear that this was basically just the writers throwing the fans a bone. They're basically saying, yeah, you like Silver and Blaze? You want them to be together? Well, here, have them be together. It doesn't really... Sure, this story might have some nice dialogue in it, but it's ultimately just a retread of something before. It doesn't really advance their characters at all. Like, it's about Silver and Blaze saying how they're in sync, but we already kinda learned that before. Or at least it was something that was just implied, There's nothing wrong with it being stated, but it's just kind of something that I would expect people to be able to figure out on their own, And again, it's nice. I like this ending, where they agree to go see the world together. But here's the thing. Like I said, we don't really get any new development from Silver and Blaze. We just get Sonic saying, yeah, you guys should totally be together. And I remember seeing someone else talk about this, which is the fact that you never actually get to see their trip. Ever. Not in an annual, not in a short story, nothing. We said, why did this story have to be like this? Why couldn't it have been Silver and Blaze meeting up together and saying, hey, you want to go do something? They try to, this is a story about their misadventures, so I heard this once before. Why don't they go to a carnival and try to win a prize or something like that? It doesn't need to be anything major, but just give us something with them that's real development, not just more shipbait. And like I said, I like these two, but this doesn't really advance their characters. It just tells us that something cool could happen, but we never get to see it because when they show up again later, it says, yeah, it already happened. Too bad for you didn't get to see it. That's boring. Okay, the art of this comic is something I talked about earlier, how I thought it was so cool that Tracy Yardley and Jamal Pepper and other art artists came back for IDW. But here's the thing. I also mentioned that this comic changes artists something like every other issue. I'm not exaggerating when I say that all three of these back-to-back issues are drawn by different people. Yes, it's not as egregious as is with other examples where the artists don't line up as much, but my problem is that the issues change artists so often, and a lot of these artists do actually have very different art styles. So when you're just going from issue to issue and the artwork keeps changing in the middle of the same story arc too, it just makes everything look very uncohesive. It also doesn't help that I just don't really like these artists that much. They're fine, but none of them really have super unique or cool paneling. Not that many cool expressions or action scenes. That's a problem with the comics' action scenes. If you look back at Archie, it was kind of like a Shonen Jump story, Where the action doesn't just happen for the sake of it. Every fight has some kind of meaning, at least in good Shonen. Goku and Vegeta's fight isn't just fighting for the sake of fighting. It's Goku's mindset of hard work and determination versus Vegeta's mindset of inborn talent. It's the lower class versus the elite. In One Piece, Luffy versus Doflamingo is about a heroic guy with a strict moral code who sees the good in people and tries to help them, bring out the best in them, fighting against a guy who just hates people. He thinks that all people are insane, and that it's just best to cause chaos and destruction and kill everyone, because nothing matters. There's no morals. Everything is an accident. I think that's a really compelling narrative. It's a really compelling fight. The fight has a meaning to it, but all the fights in this comic are just, let's watch the characters fight each other, because why not? And sure, the action is at least decent during some of it, but look, not every fight needs to be complex. I mean, the two shonen fights I just talked about were the endings of their respective arcs. Not every story arc these aren't the end of story arc fights. These are just random fights. But like in Archie, every fight, the fights didn't really matter that much. They were mostly just there to accentuate the character's emotions. As soon as the fight's done, onto a conversation, or there's a conversation during the fight. You get stories like this recent one where it's just so boring. It's just like Sonic, Tails, and Shadow and Rouge go to a party and they fight this guy dressed as a jester, and like he makes copies of himself or something. It's so boring. The comic just feels like it's spinning its wheels at this point. I know it's setting up for issue 100, so it feels like it's finally going to have some kind of direction, but for so long now, the comic just feels like it's aimless. It's going nowhere. If you're going to make a comic book like this, and you actually do have some security of, yes, I know the story will continue for a while, then plan it out. Give us something to get invested in. And if you're not, I mean, Stan Lee, Akira Toriyama, they didn't plan out their stories that much, but if you're going to focus on just episodic plots, then make each plot, like, give us something real to latch onto. This story about them going to this party, maybe we get something about Tails, you get Tails to get something out of that, how Tails is a kid. But he's been forced to go on all these crazy adventures, he never really has time to be a kid. We get to have some kind of fun going to a party like this. You get something from Rouge, because she loves parties, so, like, her whole aesthetic is like a 40, like, she'd be in I can imagine Rouge being some kind of 40s rom-com. So give us some kind of vibe like that, but no, we never get that kind of thing. Excuse me. 1 second. Okay, back to the video. So art, very inconsistent, doesn't really do much for the story, moving on. Okay, I guess one last part about the art, I just think it looks bad. The one on the left is done by Adam Bryce Thomas. Okay, part of the reason I don't like his art is because of the color. I just think the colors look really flat. Same thing on the example on the right, but I also don't like his faces. Like a lot of these artists, like Evan Stanley and Adam Bryce Thomas, they just draw really bizarre faces, and they are the ones who get to do the most issues. Why? They don't give the most issues to Tracy Yardley, who worked for Archie for a decade, and everyone loved his art. They don't give much work to Jamal Peppers, to Ben Bates, or John Gray. Instead, everything is just done by these two, mostly. This picture of the Babylon Rogues, I don't know who drew this, but I cannot be the only person who thinks this looks really bad. This does not look like an official comic. It looks like a fan comic. And there are fan comics that look way better than this. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. I mentioned Tracy Yardley before. Pretty much whenever I talk about Archie Sonic, I talk about how much I love his artwork. So the ones from 2013, that's the final, like the second to last issue of pre-reboot Archie Sonic. 2016, that's one of the last issues of Archie Sonic in general during the reboot. 2019, that's an issue of IDW. So I don't think this is Tracy Yardley's best issue, the one from 2013. It's Sonic Universe number 50, but this isn't even his best issue. Just look at it. This isn't even some big action scene. This is just like the third page, and it looks amazing. You've got these uniquely shaped panels, as like one of them twists and bends, there's all this negative space. One of the panels looks like it's blowing up. And you've just got these awesome expressions for Sard looking all snarky and cool. You could see Metal Sonic's eye in the middle panel where he looks thinking, oh my god, what's going to happen to me? It just looks so cool. You've got this amazing image of Shard holding Metal Sonic's head as he says, yeah, except no imitations. This is cool. We get to his work on Reboot, though. I don't think this looks bad. I still think this looks good. He's got some cool panels, but this is mostly one of the biggest action scenes ever, and it looks less interesting than an action scene that's just supposed to be the opener for an issue, not something huge. It's kind of sad how his art just kind of declined, honestly. The IW especially has this problem. Again, this is supposed to be a big fight, but well, it doesn't look bad. I still say it looks good. There's something about it that just looks a bit less interesting, you know? Part of that could have been that Tracy Yardley now does his own inks instead of having someone else do it. And here's the thing. He did his own inks in Archie, but that was only for covers. And yes, those covers looked great, but there's a difference between doing one image and doing an entire issue. And his art just isn't as cool. I also don't like the coloring as much, but there's also this. I'm just thinking that, man, Tracy Yardley was known for his dynamic expressions. He really expressed every character's emotions to the extreme with their cool facial features, but in RDW, the artwork just looks a bit more flat. And lo and behold, I saw an interview with Yardley, which I'll link in the description, where he says that, oh yeah, in IDW, I'm literally not allowed to make the characters as expressive as I used to be. He said, you know what, I didn't create the characters, so if they put this rule on me, fine. But that's just sad. It's one thing to restrict specific story decisions, because you don't want to fall into the kinds of traps that Archie or maybe did, which, sure, not all of those were bad things, but whatever. Point is, they want to keep their stories more concise. Fine. But to be even saying the artwork can't be as good, that's sad. Oh boy, we're really here. It's time to talk about Sonic's morals, or lack thereof. One of the videos I'm going to link in the description is called The Rise and Fall of Ian Flynn. It does a way better job explaining this problem than I will, but it still needs to be said in my video anyway. So, Metal Sonic just almost took over the world. Sure, it was a sort of action movie take over the world, not a big, like, this guy was, like, seriously gonna kill a bunch of people or anything, but though Metal Sonic is a longtime rival of Sonic, Sonic knows he's a bad guy, he just got beat up, but he says to Tails, let's repair him. He says, why do you want to repair him? Because we could make him a good guy. So he becomes a good guy, he gets rebuilt, and he says, hey, Metal, you could be a good guy if you just try. Come on, be a good guy. And then Metal just slaps him, flies away, and Tails asks, hey, shouldn't we go after him? And he says, we gave him the choice to live how he wants to. We've got to honor his decision. What the heck? They should have just destroyed Metal Sonic. Eggman could just build another. I know he could. Sure, they don't know about Eggman yet, but whatever. Point is that, why would Sonic, he doesn't even put him in prison. Why would Sonic be saying to the evil villain they just beat, let him go because we've got to honor his decision? Who the heck is writing this? Some kind of civil rights activist? But then we get to the really, really egregious example of this. So, the Zeddy have returned yet again, and they've killed a bunch of people. Canonically, Ian Flynn even said so. They drop a tree on a guy, he tells Zalmom, say, hey, consume everything. And there are a bunch of people in the distance implying that the dude ate people. And so Sonic's got him beat, and he says, wait, you're going to show us mercy? He says, we've already won, that's enough. But aside from it being really humbling for you guys. But then Zavok just laughs in his face because he says, I will make you regret showing restraint. This moment of compassion will be repaid tenfold in violence and misery. And we get flashbacks to, when every single time Sonic decided to let a villain go. And how all this bad stuff happened. Like when Shadow tells him, if I had just killed Eggman back when he's Mr. Tinker, none of this would have happened. And to be fair, Flynn probably just wasn't thinking about that when he wrote that story. But the point of that scene though, is that Shadow was saying to Sonic, hey, you could have just locked Eggman up in jail at least, but no. You decided to let this guy who just took over the world go, and now he just caused a zombie apocalypse with no seeming cure. The same issue, you've got SBO saying, you shouldn't have let Eggman go. My friends, my family basically, are zombies now because of you. And hey, Metal Sonic got fully repaired and is now being used to hurt Sonic. And when Sonic asks Eggman, but didn't you want to be Mr. Tinker? You could have been a good guy. He says to the guy he's been fighting for his entire life and has taken over the world and blown up the moon. Eggman just says, yeah, that life was relaxing, but I'm so much happier doing this now. So there are 4 different examples in this one, technically 5 if you count what's actually happening, of Sonic being told that no, letting villains go is not okay. I'll get more into why I have an issue with this, but here's the thing. Sonic thinks about this and he says, I'm not going to sacrifice my principles out of fear. You want to cause more trouble? Fine, waste your time, I'll kick your butt every time. Here's the thing. Sonic isn't saying, even if you come back, I'm just going to beat you up before you cause any mayhem. He's saying, no, you can come back, kill a bunch of people, and then I'll beat you up. What? It's not like they don't have a prison in this universe. They put Zavok in prison before. Now you might be, and Sonic is straight up saying that letting murderers go is his principles. And you might be saying, but why are you talking about this? This is a Sonic comic. But here's the thing. The comic chose to focus on this. This is an integral part of Sonic's character. If it wants me to think about this, then I am thinking about it and I am discussing it. But there's this. This infamous panel that sparked a million debates. So, Sonic finds out that Surge has been kidnapped, turned into a cyborg, by two people, evil villains he was told multiple times you should not let go, because you let them go and they caused more destruction and probably killed people. But Sonic says to Surge, who is completely right when saying that you letting all these people go is just causing more death and destruction, and he says, I live for the moment. I want to see the world, find all its thrills and adventures, and enjoy them. Okay, I like that. He says, I want everyone to have the freedom to do that too. And you won't get the opportunity if I took that chance away from you. I've made peace with enough enemies to know there is a better way. So I'm willing to chalk this up to a rocky start and let us have a do-over, if you will. Just like that. Just like that. The doctors too? Even them. So what Sonic is basically saying here, and Ian Flynn has even defended this, is that Sonic is basically saying that evil villains who kill people should not be getting a second chance, not a third. They should get infinite chances. They should be allowed to run free forever. Even when he is faced with someone who was directly suffered because of them, he's telling her, who cares? I'm not going to sacrifice my principles. Everyone needs to be free. This almost makes Sonic sound like some kind of anarchist. I mean, what the heck? And he says, I've made peace with enough enemies to know there is a better way. But keep in mind what happened to those enemies. Knuckles was tricked by Eggman into fighting Sonic. But here's the thing. Eggman was the first person Knuckles ever interacted with in probably his entire life. So when he sees Eggman and he says, hey, these two guys named Sonic and Tails are bad, of course he's going to believe them. And also, I don't think Knuckles ever tried to kill Sonic. But then you got to Shadow. Again, like I said before, Shadow had his memories messed with. When he found out what his true purpose in life was, he immediately went to save the day. He sacrificed himself to save the Earth. So, but then you're looking at Shadow and Knuckles aren't comparable to Eggman, who is just straight up evil. He took over the world in Sonic Forces, which we are acknowledging. He caused a zombie apocalypse, which never would have happened if Sonic had just put him in jail or something. And again, I might be saying, but come on, who cares? It's a Sonic comic. Again, this is supposed to be Sonic's, one of his main character traits. So I am going to talk about this because the comic is focusing on it. And Surge says, so you want me to reinvent myself, see the world that rejected me? She says, if I volunteered to work with Starline, I obviously didn't have anything good going on in my life. And if he kidnapped me, nobody's tried to find me. So clearly, what you did to me was just terrible. And there is no excuse for it. And Sonic doesn't say, man, maybe you're right. He says to her, fine, we'll do it your way. He's acting so condescending, thinking that that he is completely right. And remember, I said before that Sonic is eventually told that you don't care about Surge, you just care about your stupid principles. That is brought up in the story right after this. Sonic is basically being told, man, you stink, get a life. And it's not like Sonic, and you know what? Giving villains a second chance isn't necessarily a bad thing. It can lead to some great redemption stories. But here's the thing. These villains don't deserve second chances, and he's giving them infinite chances. And the worst thing is that him giving villains a second chance never actually pays off. It pays off in a miniseries that was done by a different author. Eggman, Starline, Metal Sonic, Zavok. Him letting these people go just led to more pain. It didn't actually... No, none of these people said, maybe I should change my ways. I mean, look, now when I've discussed this with people, they've told me, but Sonic's not a hero. That is wrong. But to me, there are three types of hero archetypes. Sonic is in the middle, but the big two on the end and the middle, the end and the beginning are Superman and Goku. Goku is on the end. If he is a hero, but only kinda. If you read the manga or watch Dragon Ball Z Kai or play Kakarot or whatever, you remember the actual correct version of Goku's Super Saiyan speech. He says to Frieza, "I am a Saiyan who came all the way from Earth for the sole purpose of beating you. I am the warrior you've heard of in legends, pure of heart and awakened by fury. That's what I am. I am the Super Saiyan, Son Goku." Goku isn't saying to this evil murderer that I am here to stop your evil ways once and for all because I'm a hero, I'm a good guy. He's saying, I'm the warrior of legend you've been terrified of for your entire life, and I'm going to beat the living daylights out of you for what you've done to my friends. Not to say that Goku isn't a hero. He does really care about his friends and family. He has saved the Earth time and time again. He does care about people. Multiple times he gives villains a second chance. And each time it's like, okay, sometimes, but Sonic also gave a lot of guys second chance. Except the problem with that is that, like I said, when Sonic gave villains, he let them go, it only led to more pain. With Goku, he lets Frieza go, but then Frieza instantly tries to shoot him, and then Goku has to kill him, and he realizes that, for a fact, that there are some villains who just can't be reasoned with. Sometimes you just, even if it's sad, some people are just too evil, and you have to deal with them. That's one of the reasons why I don't like that scene in the Moro Saga where Goku gives him a Senzu Bean, because he should have learned by now that you don't give second chances to evil alien warlords who've murdered billions of people. But he did, gave Vegeta a second chance. Sure, it wasn't out of mercy, it was because he wanted to fight him again. But ultimately, despite the fact that it took years, Vegeta did become a trusted ally. He gave Piccolo a second chance, which was also, again, for the sake of, we need Piccolo to live so Kami can live, but Piccolo ended up having a change of heart. Goku has shown that, while his actions of giving villains second chances can sometimes be bad, it also can be good. So Goku is a good person who does care about other people. Yes, he ultimately cares about having a good fight, above all else, but he's still a good person and a hero. Superman, on the other hand, has almost no flaws. In Superman the movie, he is sent out by his Kryptonian parents and his Earth parents to save the world, be a good person, to be a light of hope to all the people of the world, to be a good example. And he is. He doesn't just save cats from, people from Lex Luthor, he also saves cats from trees. He's just a really nice, kind person. But he's not perfect. He reverses time at the end like he wasn't, even though he wasn't supposed to show that he is still a man at the end of the day. He still makes mistakes. But he made that mistake to save someone. He's certainly not perfect, but he's still a great hero. So, if Superman is a great hero with a few flaws, Goku is a good hero with a lot of flaws. To me, Sonic is in the middle of that. Yes, he does ultimately care mostly about having adventures, having fun, fighting bad guys, but Sonic still loves friends. He doesn't like villains. He fights them because it's the right thing to do. He saved the world multiple times. He is a good person. So it annoys me when people say that, well, Sonic could let Surge go because Sonic doesn't really care about anything. If Sonic doesn't care about anything, then one, he wouldn't be a hero. He wouldn't be a protagonist. He wouldn't be someone you should look up to. But also, he would just be so boring if he were just whatever. And clearly Sonic is not just a whatever guy. He has a character. Time to talk about the real Sonic's moral. So, for the two people watching this who haven't read Archie Sonic, so in issue 200, Sonic defeats Eggman. And keep in mind, in this world, Eggman has taken over the Earth, or Mobius. He's probably killed a bunch of people. He's enslaved a bunch of people. The whole story is about seeing how people are affected by Eggman's takeover. But here's the thing, when Sonic decisively beats Eggman, Eggman loses his mind. He starts rolling around on the floor screaming like a crazy person. He's tearing out his mustache. You can see his red eyes from underneath his glasses. He's screaming, "I hate that hedgehog, ah!" And Sonic just feels bad about it. And the thing is, he feels bad that he feels bad. Tails says, "You're not going easy on him, are you?" I guess I am. But why? I really wish I knew. I mean, I've had no trouble wanting to kick his big old butt in the past. Everything he's done is unforgivable. But he says, this is different somehow. I didn't just beat him. I broke him. And as stupid as that sounds, it makes me feel bad. Because keep in mind, Sonic doesn't care about Eggman. He's not saying Eggman should get a second chance. What he is saying is that he just feels bad that he basically drove a man to insanity. And Tails says, you're wrong. He doesn't deserve sympathy. But, we don't need to be cruel in how we handle him. We can take him to prison where he won't have to be locked in a straitjacket by his evil nephew. So they take Eggman to prison. But here's the thing. Monkey Khan here questions Sonic. He says, "Why do you show that man mercy? He wiped out my village and he ruined my life. He's nearly destroyed everything you know and love time and time again. He's a monster unlike anything this world has ever known. And you merely lock him away? You show him sympathy? Understanding? How? How can you do that?" "I don't know. I guess I move too fast to have time to be all vengeful and stuff. I just do it right at the time." "You're either a Zen master or a fool, but you're impressive either way. Thanks, I think." So what this scene is meant to say is that Sonic really didn't need to show Eggman mercy. But, like I said before, he felt bad about driving a man to insanity, and he just didn't have the heart to finish the job. And so, because he just does it right at the time, and at the time it felt bad to have killed him if he had killed him. And the thing is, he doesn't just leave Eggman and say, "I feel bad, I drove you to insanity, go free." He still puts him in prison. And the thing is, when Eggman does actually come back, Sonic tells him, "This time, I'm not interested in mercy." Granted that Sonic and Eggman never got to have their final battle for two reasons. One, the comic was rebooted, and two, since the comic was meant to go on forever, Sonic and Eggman would have never been able to have that final battle, because the comic had to go on forever. So Sonic's saying, I'm gonna get to one decisive battle with you, and I am going to defeat you once and for all. Sure, Eggman probably would have just blown up or something in a big machine. He wouldn't have been murdered killed by Sonic or something. But you know, so that's the point of this scene. Sonic isn't going to show someone as evil as Eggman. He's not going to let him go free. No, but he's not going to kill him because that would just feel wrong for what he just saw. But he still takes action to put him away. I just want to talk about Ian Flynn. His writing back in the day versus how it is now. I haven't really talked about Flynn that much because not only does IDW have multiple writers, it also, even though it's mostly Flynn, it also has to deal with Sega and all that stuff. So, and I just really feel bad about knocking on Ian Flynn so much, even though I do think he deserves it sometimes. But I just want to compare a specific scene of how he used to write versus how he writes now. So, we all, as Archie fans, all love this scene. Super Scourge is going to kill Sonic, and Sonic's thinking, there's no possible way I could beat this guy. And when I go into super form, even after I power down, I feel good. He's thinking, wait, the Scourge's from another planet, another dimension. He's from the opposite world. So he comes up with a plan. So he tells Scourge, "You're gonna kill me? Whatever, okay, fine. I took you down on my own without any special power-ups, but you needed a big fancy super form. You probably couldn't even beat me now without all that power. I've been more than a match for you since day one. I can finish you, super or not. Prove it, tough guy. Fine, you arrogant little..." So, Sonic cracked Scourge's code. He figured that if Scourge gets tons of Anarchy Barrel, which lets him power up into a super form, it's easy to get a super form, because Anarchy Barrel is so accessible. But for Sonic, getting Chaos Emeralds are hard. So when he does go super, it gives him a boost after he powers down and say that you did such a good job, it was so hard to collect those emeralds, you're going to get a power up even after you power down. Since, Scourge is burned out now, Sonic has won. But Scourge still says, "You've cheated me. I'm king. Conquer this whole planet. You're nothing." And then Sonic beats him up and says that he's nothing but a big bully. He's just a big jerk. He's not deep or anything, like he tried to get Sonic to think. He's just a loser. And Sonic's going to show him that, as we get these just amazingly drawn panels with such great pencils, inking, artwork, paneling, lettering, the whole shebang. It's amazing. Then we get to Flynn's stuff now. So, this doesn't really have as much to do with it, but as you can see through a scene like this, or this is a serious story. Look at this panel of Sonic on the last page where he looks super angry, and the way the whole thing is silhouetted in the rain. Or I mentioned that Preboot is all about the character surviving a war that Eggman started. But in IDW, there is no war. Eggman is like how he is in the games. But here's the thing. Ian Flynn loves dark stories. In Preboot, that was okay because the world was already so insane that doing a dark story would have just been par for the course. But it helped that he also injected a lot of humor into it, and it was about, okay, the world is tragic, but how do you move on from that tragedy? There are still things to be happy about, as long as you have your friends by your side. It's really uplifting and touching. But in IDW, he doesn't have as much humor, and he just wants things to be as dark as possible. I mentioned the metal virus before. It's a zombie apocalypse, basically. So, Tangle is getting turned into a zombie, and then Whisper finds out. She just screams in this super detailed panel of her looking so emotionally distraught. This is awful. Cream the rabbit. So, she's getting infected by the metal virus too. And she says, she decides to close her eyes. The general says, I will stay with you until you are well. This is basically her accepting like she's gonna die or something. What the heck, Ian Flynn? Who told you that this... Were there no editors to say, let's not do this? Let's not have a 16-issue, 18-issue maybe, zombie apocalypse story where you just watch all the characters suffer forever? What? And there's no kind of theme in this. You could say maybe it's about Sonic learning that when you let villains go, something this bad can happen, but no. Sonic never learned his lesson. This whole story is just, let's watch characters suffer for an indefinite amount of time until they no longer suffer. Other things too. Like I said, Sonic's whole, I'm gonna let you go, Doc. We've got this other scene where he says to Eggman, until next time, Doc, and then time after that, and the one after that. Maybe you'll eventually come around. Are you serious? Do you think Eggman is actually going to become a good guy? Like, even in Eggman's official character bio now, it says, while Sonic is his bitter enemy, Dr. Eggman can't help but respect his incredible skill and spirit, which is true. Likewise, Sonic genuinely respects the Doctor's tenacity, although he wishes he'd use his genius for good. What? And you could say that, well, doesn't Sonic always save Eggman at the end of each game? No. In the end of all the classic Sonic games, it looks like Eggman has been left for dead. At the end of Sonic Adventure 2, after all these crazy experiences, it's the kind of moment where you say, we're too tired to chase each other, let's just go our separate ways and deal with it next time. In Sonic Heroes, Eggman isn't even the villain. Metal Sonic is. And it does end with the Chaotix chasing him away. Shadow the Hedgehog, Eggman's not the villain. Sonic 06, the timeline gets erased, the game gets erased at the end, so Eggman didn't actually do anything. Sonic and the Secret Rings, Eggman's not there. Unleashed, Eggman gets swatted away by a giant monster and is presumably dead. Black Knight, he's not there. Colors, it looks like he gets swept up by a black hole. In Sonic Lost World, or Generations, he's left in a white void, etc., etc. The point is, Eggman, it makes sense for him to not just be killed or arrested at the end of each game. But here, that doesn't apply. And the comic is asking the question so often of why doesn't Sonic kill Eggman or why doesn't he put him in jail that it's just making me think, man, Sonic, you are awful. I don't hate all of Ian Flynn's new writing though. I mean, the Knuckles prologue to Sonic Frontiers is really cool. Great animation, great voice acting, great music, great writing. Although Knuckles is Ian Flynn's favorite character, so that might be it. Shadow Generations Dark Beginnings was amazing. Proved that Flynn still knows how to write Shadow, he just doesn't show it in his comics for some reason. Shadow Generations itself, yes, it didn't have as many cutscenes as it needed, but it was still a good story that respected Shadow very well. In Sonic Racing Crosswords, we have all these rival interactions. We've got probably 100 of them. Yes, interactions with Amy, Metal Sonic aren't so good, but the rest of the characters are actually written well. Sonic is cool, Tails is fun, Knuckles is cool, Vector is really funny, Omega is... Shadow's okay, I guess. Eggman's decent. Silver and Blaze are great. Jet the Hawk's great, etc. So Flynn clearly hasn't lost his touch. It's his writing's very inconsistent. Okay, so... excuse me. You might be wondering, if you saw the thumbnail of this video, it says, IDW, the anti-Archie Sonic. You might be wondering, what do I mean by that? Because I've been talking about comparisons to Archie a lot. But here's the thing. I should have mentioned this at the beginning of the video, but I am not mad at this comic isn't Archie Sonic. I knew that it was never going to be, and that's okay. My problem is that it feels like basically everything Archie Sonic tried to do is not, it's not just that it's not here, it feels like it's being insulted, and when it isn't, it's terrible. Like I said before, Archie can get pretty dark sometimes. IDW also gets dark, but it has no meaning. It's just darkness for the sake of being dark. You have this big cast of characters in Archie, where everyone was basically equal and all got as much time as they needed. Well, in IDW, most of the characters don't get as much time as they need. Some of them do, but I talked about Silver and Blaze and how much I like them. Most of their scenes are in annuals or B-stories or whatever. They're not in the main comic, even though some of them are. Like that Victory Garden story, that was in an annual. Or you just got stuff like really inconsistent artwork. Yes, Archie did have inconsistent artwork for a time, but when it was consistent, it was very consistent, and it was also just good. I know what is good art is slightly subjective, but I still really don't like most of IDW's artwork. But other than all that stuff, you might be asking, okay, but how is it really the anti-Archie? To me, it is the anti-Archie because it just has no real goal or plan anymore. Every single writer who worked for Archie always had some kind of plan. Ken Penders and Carl Blores have both said that had they kept writing for the comic, they had all these plans they were going to get to. Ian Flynn had 2 years worth of story that he never got to write. Once the comic got rebooted, he still had way more story he wanted to get to. When he got to IDW, he thought, I'm not going to try to plan anything out anymore because I'll probably just get burned again. I'll just write the story as I go. Which again is fine, but the story just feels so aimless now. It has nothing to say. It's not really that exciting. It's not really that funny. It's nothing. And that's really sad. I'm sure this video will be controversial, but I hope maybe someone can finally understand why I wouldn't like IDW, because I've gotten some comments about that before. I didn't like IDW. I hope this answered your questions. I just thought that, as negative as this could get, I still do think this was an interesting discussion. That's all for now. Excuse me. Oh boy. And remember, you just gotta stay way past cool.